Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things we need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. After that, we're going to remove our center cover here and then all 5 of our lug nuts so we can remove the wheel. Okay, now that we have the wheel off, the next thing that we want to do is push back our caliper piston. That's going to be located in this area right here. Essentially what I'm going to do is just use a nice pry bar. I'm going to carefully get in between the caliper and the rotor, and I'm going to gently pry on this. As I pry it, it's going to go ahead and push in that caliper piston for me until it won't go in any further. We can move this around a little bit at this point, and then remove our 2 caliper bracket slider bolts. We'll leave that one loose for now. Do this one. Fully remove the pair. Now we can remove the caliper from the area and then inspect it. What we're looking for is to see if there's any damage to the caliper. If you see a chip in the piston or if it seems as though there's fluid coming out of it, that means you have to replace the caliper. This one right here just has a little bit of grease on it. It looks fine to me. I'm going to set it aside, making sure I put no pressure on that flex hose. Go ahead and grab these pads. We'll get those right out of the way. Set those aside. With the pads out of the way, let's continue on to the 2 caliper bracket bolts. Use a 17mm to remove the pair. Just going to leave that in there a couple threads. Remove that last bolt, remove the caliper bracket, and set it aside. Remove your rotor. With the rotor off of there, the next thing you want to pay attention to is the mating surface of your bearing hub. That's this area right here. Go ahead and clean it off. Make sure it's free and clear of any debris. Sometimes you have to use a brush. Once it's dry, go ahead and apply some copper never seize. Next, it's going to be time to go ahead and install our brand new rotor. But on that brand new rotor, you're going to notice that it has a protective layer on it, or a coating. Go ahead and clean that off with some parts cleaner. Make sure you do both sides of the braking surface. Let's get this on the car. Get that right in position. Take one of your lug nuts. We're going to go ahead and tighten it right on here. That's going to hold the rotor for us so it doesn't move around while we continue working. The next thing we're going to do is start stripping down our caliper bracket. Generally, you're going to have 2 of these tins on it. You can just grab onto that, take it right off. We'll set that aside for recycling. There should be one on the other side. After that, we're going to start removing these slider pins right here. Go ahead and grab onto it. We're going to give it a little twist. Grab onto that boot and slide the pin right out and away from it. When you put these down, put them on the same corresponding side. I'll show you why. There we are. You can pull that right out of there. And now you can see why. On the end of this one right here, it's supposed to have a rubber boot. That's essentially for vibration dampening and noise reduction while you're braking. If you put it in the wrong side, that's going to cause an issue for braking. Let's go ahead and clean off those pins. I'm just going to wipe down the shaft here so we can have a closer look at it. Now, once you have it wiped off, you want to thoroughly inspect it. Pay attention, see if it looks like it's rotted or damaged in any way. If there's something that's causing this to have a restriction on being able to go in and out on your bracket, you're going to have a braking issue. Just go ahead and wipe it down. Also, you want to take quick note of this area up along here. This is super important. That's where the boot's going to ride. If you have any crud in there, that's going to cause an issue where moisture could make its way inside there and seize up your caliper slider pins. Go ahead and clean out all this, clean up the shaft, do the same to the other one. Now, once you have the slider pins cleaned up, let's continue on to the bracket here. I'm just going to use a nice collection bucket, hand and eye protection. We'll spray some parts cleaner inside here and then use a bore brush to clean it out. Dump that out. Give it a little rinse. Do the same to the other side. All right, now once you have them sprayed out, let's continue on by checking the boots. Just go ahead and give them a little tug, give them a wiggle, make sure they're nice and soft and pliable and they're not torn or worn in any way. Just check them both. Once you have all those inspected, let's continue on to this area right here. You're going to have 4 corners that look just like this. Essentially, you want to make sure that you clean out any of the dirt or debris that's in this area. Any buildup could potentially cause an area where the pad isn't going to be able to function properly. So now that we have all 4 corners cleaned up, let's go ahead and turn this bracket over, and we're going to pay attention to this area all in here, which is essentially where that rotor is going to ride. You want to make sure there isn't any large flakes up in there as well. Now at this point, let's continue on with some caliper grease here. I'm going to use a little less than that actually. And I'm going to essentially just go ahead and put a little bit of grease into all 4 of those corners that we just went ahead and cleaned. Once you've lubricated it, go ahead and put on your tins. Slide those right into place. Now let's start lubricating our caliper sliders. You want to make sure that you lubricate the entire shaft of it. And then make double sure that you get all the way down into that final groove, all the way down at the very end. That part's super important. That's going to help keep moisture out of there like I said before. Go ahead and slide it in. Give it a nice little twist. Make sure everything's situated perfectly. Do the same to your other pin. Once your caliper bracket's fully prepared, let's get back over to the vehicle. We're going to take some red thread locker, put it right on these caliper bracket bolts. Grab that bracket, put it in position, start these in, and then we'll torque the bolts to 80 foot-pounds. Now let's get our pads on here. For this, we're going to go ahead and take the tab, or the ear, from the pad, slide it right down and into the bracket, right onto those tins. Do one of them down here, and then do the same up along the top, squeeze it in. Now for the pads, they should just want to kind of squeeze right in there fairly easily. If you have to try to use a hammer or bonk them in there for any reason, more than likely you didn't clean up the bracket enough. Once they're both in, just give them a little wiggle, make sure that they can move around inside the bracket. That's super important. Now we're going to move along to the caliper itself. I'm just going to go ahead and try to wipe down the majority of this as much as possible. After that, we're going to apply a little bit of lubricant of our own. Once it's wiped down, let's use a little bit of that caliper grease. We're going to go just along the piston here, the metal aspect of it. Put a nice coating on there, and then the back side of both of these ears. This is going to help with vibration dampening and noise reduction overall. Now let's swing that caliper right up and over the pads. We're going to try to push in those caliper slider pins at the same time so we can push this right over. Line up the ears of the caliper pins with the caliper. Then we're going to take both of our caliper mounting bolts here, the caliper slider bolts, start them in there. After that, snug them up, then torque them to 20 foot-pounds. Let's get this off of here and grab our wheel. Let's get the wheel on here. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and start on all of our lug nuts, bottom them out, get the wheel on the ground, and then we'll torque the lug nuts to 76 foot-pounds. Torqued. Go ahead and take this, pop it on there.